like co-host, or how do you get me? How's this happening so I know how to do it?
So I will just, you can just follow my lead of questions.
I mean, far as this is a Zoom
Hmm.
meeting or Zoom webinar.
Meeting.
Okay.
And hello, everyone on Facebook. Welcome to Simply Felicity. And today I have an honor and a privilege because I am interviewing none other than my spiritual mentor and the man who ordained me over the summer. He is the head of the Oasis Spiritual Center, Pastor and Apostle Gregory Stanton. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
I thank you for having me this evening. I'm really happy to be here. I've looked forward to this the entire day.
Oh, I'm so glad. I am so, so glad. So, we've got a special show, and this is a topic that, if you've been following me, you know is near and dear to my heart. I am very interested in what Gregory does and has been doing for, I think, I know you've been in ministry a long time, but how long have you been in this space of what we would call, I believe you've referred to as expanded Christianity?
I've been on the journey since 1990. Actually, I started in '87, but I've been in the space of the spiritual conversation since probably 1972, when I
Uh,
was 12. I started having some unique conversations with God, um, independent of. I didn't grow up in a family that we went to church every Sunday. We were CMEs. That means Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter. And so, but I had a God consciousness at an early age, and began to read the Bible. We had an interesting old Bible that had pictures in it. It was always like a picture Bible with stories all the way through. And so that kind of captured my attention. And so that got me into the conversation.
Do you know
Yeah.
what year I was born, Gregory?
What, 72?
72. I
Oh,
mean,
isn't that something?
isn't
Right.
that something? That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
quite amazing. I mean, I know that our meeting was nothing coincidental about it, but I
Mhm.
actually still can't remember quite how I found you on Facebook. I mean, I think it was
Well,
just that you
I,
were,
I didn't know how we were on a podcast together
thank you. You've told this before and I forgot
about
again. That's
relationships,
right.
and yeah, that's where we first met there
And you
in
told me you were
Bellwood,
on
Illinois.
Facebook and I found you.
Right. Hmm.
That makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay. So,
So,
but
so
God,
I did.
God
Right.
had
So I
this
let you
plan
know.
from the day of my birth because that's when your spiritual awakening was.
That's
So that's
right.
so
That's
cool.
right. That's right. So I was. That's interesting because it was I was 12, and that's a God number. 12 is the number of God numerically. So that's just interesting. So preordained. Yeah.
Preordained. I knew this moment was very special.
Yeah.
So, um, you said you were having unique conversations with God. What precipitated it, and what can you share with us about the conversation?
Well, the one that stands out most, first of all, I want to say hello to my Facebook audience that's joined on the watch party. Hey guys, I see you guys out there. If you got questions, pop them in here, drop them in here, and then I will convey them to Minister Felicity. So, um, what really comes to my memory was one day when I was about 12. It was around 7 o'clock, 7:30 p.m. in the summer. It was a summer month, and I was headed home because I came from a family that was rather, I wouldn't say strict, but my parents um, ran a tight ship.
Okay,
And so one of the things, we had to be home or on the block in front of the house when the street lights came on.
come
So
on.
I was headed home. It was dusk, But when I was coming down, it was on Madison, and everyone from Maywood, Illinois knows Madison and uh, 11th Ave, no 10th Avenue. There was 11th, 12th, Madison and 12th, because I lived on 11th, and there was a tent revival going on. And so it was an old school tent revival, and it was a warm summer night, and the organ was playing, the people were standing up, dust was flying everywhere, and I was on the street looking in, so I could see all the way down the middle aisle and see all this commotion. And the preacher was speaking a strange language. I remember that 'cause I'm Baptist now. And so at this point in my life, I was going, when we did go to church, I was going to a Baptist church,
Okay.
and I never seen nothing of the sort. So I'm looking, but I'm also realizing that it's getting darker. And so I couldn't stay to see the entire show, because that's what it was to me at that time. But I saw like people falling out. And I said, and I remember saying to God, that's what I referenced God to at that time. If you are real, if that's real in my lifetime, let me know. And so I believe that gave the okay, because God never does anything against our will. And so from that point on, I began to have very unique experiences. One being the desire to, when I was like 16, 17, I started to go to church frequently on my own, visited a couple of churches. And part of that motivation was initially because of the young lady I was dating. So it influenced me to go. It's interesting, God has used women my whole life to guide me like a crumb trail to him. It's like my wife, some way I met her, and then she was a minister, and that's 1979, and she was in a Baptist church, so she was going against the grain because the Baptist church at that time didn't believe that women could stand in the pulpit, let alone be a minister. So
Wow.
I remember encouraging her, hey, if this is what you believe God is so you do, to go for it. And at that point in time, I'm not in that conversation that deep, but I was in that conversation deeply because I was deeply in love with her.
Yeah.
So that's how my life has had. I have had a number of things that transpired. Like when I went to boot camp, I ended up teaching a Bible study to the whole command at night. I was like, how did that happen? so so it just things evolved. So so these conversations I have had from the place of wanting, if God was real, it was his responsibility, its responsibility to reveal himself to me. And so I've had a unique relationship and a challenging relationship because it came with, now that I showed you, here's what I want you to do.
Mm, that's good. And I really encourage people about practicality in their relationship with God.
Mhm.
And that is what made your relationship unique with God, that you didn't like make up faith to be something that had no evidence, right? Or
Right.
that God wasn't proving himself to you. I think that, you know, especially in modern Christianity, we kind of get in these clubs, and they're kind of nice people clubs, and faith becomes something that you just sort of talk about. It doesn't have any evidence necessarily. There
Right.
are a lot of things that we don't we don't want to think of them as fairy tales in the Bible, but we become the type of people that just believe these things. And so it's okay when things don't actually happen in our lives. And so I know
Right.
that, like, my expanded Christian conversation and my desire to really listen to the things you were talking about is because I became very concerned with the lack of evidence, and that people were okay, right? Like, if you saw some things on the pulpit, but it didn't even happen in your life, you're just okay. And I'm like, what? You know, because
I
these
know.
are
Yeah.
people that are telling me to believe the word. And I'm like, that ain't in the word that it's not supposed to happen for you. And we make up
Right.
very strange excuses. And
Right.
it was just never okay with me. So
Mhm.
it just, the fact that your Christianity began in an evidence based way, I think is unique and something that you kind of see when you read different biographies of people and things like that. People who have unique experiences with God allow it to be an evidentiary
Right.
experience, which I believe God wants it to be.
Did you used to watch Fred Price Ministries? His
I
tagline,
have seen him
ev-
before.
evidence. His tagline is evidence will put you away. And when you talk about evidence, so my whole life has been about evidence when it comes to God. So one of the things is the conversation was God, where God met me has kind of been um, the place that I stay at. Like I never felt compelled to have to become something else. I didn't have to feel pious or didn't have to be religious. Now, I have had all the opportunities in the world, and I know that game really well to wear a collar, do all the things, speak the Christianese and all of those things. But I have really kind of gone out my way to be an average kind of guy. Now, when I mean average, I mean like the world average. I mean just like touchable and people be amazed. And sometimes it's offensive to the religious community. But this is how he called me. And matter of fact, my conversation isn't for the religious community. They're okay with what they are, stay there. So I can tell you about one of my first, well, my first evidence situation was at around 12 or 13. I was diagnosed as having allergies and asthma, and the doctor told my mom that okay, not only okay, so he's gonna have to come every week to get a shot and all these kinds of things. And when you get home, you gotta take the carpet out of his room. You gotta remove the curtains. You gotta do a lot of things. And the thing that I knew was the nail in my coffin when he told her, and you gotta stop smoking. So I knew she wasn't gonna stop smoking. I knew she wasn't gonna pull the curtains down. And I said, like, I'm in trouble. So that's when I began to have the conversation with God about if you real, and I never say if you was real, if healing is real, let me see it. So I used to have often bouts of illness where I would be sick, and so I began to not only read the scriptures, and at that point I didn't know nothing about Greek, Hebrew, and all that, but just read it at face value. I would see these people being healed. The conversation was healing as the children's bread. So I was saying, okay, I'm going to put it to play, and I began to um, position myself when I would be sick. So first I identified that normally when I would be sick, it would be about 3 days I would be sick. So I said, okay, so if I'm gonna be sick, so now I'm gonna only be sick 2 days. When I become ill, it's gonna last 2 days. And it started working. Then I said, well, it's gonna only last one day. And it started working. And so for the longest time, I will allow myself to, I would have that human condition of an illness, and I would say it'll be over tomorrow. But then I said, wait a minute, why do I even have to experience it? So when I would feel a sensation, or when I would have that experience to let me know that tomorrow you were possibly going to be sick, I would kick in that thought that I'm healed, that I don't get sick. And guess what happened? It's probably been a good 30 years, 30 to 40 years since I really been sick. And I used to be sick all the time. Now, sometimes I would get a sniffle, but then I go to work on it. But I haven't seen the full manifestation of an illness in over 40 years. And people think that's crazy. And I really don't talk about it unless I'm in a conversation with someone, because the world then began to ask all kinds of crazy questions and people looking for you. Oh, he's sniffling, he must be sick. Oh, no. So that was for me a sign that we are more powerful than we realize.
Yes.
So I had
Yes.
that experience. And then I had a more significant experience in 1980. It had to be 1981, the spring of 81. I was rear-ended in a car accident um, in in uh, in California, Ventura, California. I had gotten off of work. I was sitting at the stop light. No, it was stop sign. I was sitting there, and I heard this screech, and this lady rammed into my car really, really hard. And long on the story is, I had a whiplash. So that same day, okay, so I'll go to the hospital, all those kinds of things, and so um, I call an attorney, probably a couple days, and then I have this meeting with the attorney. I remember this Jewish guy. That was, matter of fact, the first time I ever sat in a Mercedes. This
Mm.
is 19. This is 1981. So he has this really nice Mercedes. He comes to the base. We get in there. We fill out all the paperwork, and then he says, "You got to make sure you keep your neck brace on. You got to do all these things, and we're gonna get you paid." He said, in my language, I was gonna get paid. So after I got out the car that same day, I'm headed back to the barracks with this neck brace on, and this brother from St. Louis, his name was Roscoe. I just remember Roscoe was sitting on the wall with a Bible. He said, "Hey man, you want to go to a Bible study?" And I said, "Not really." Then he said, "You look like you need to go to a Bible study because I got a neck brace on." So I said, "Okay, cool." So I go with him to this Bible study, not knowing that anything was going to happen. So at the end of the preacher's message, he had a healing line. And he
Oh,
says, if anybody here want prayer for anything, and come on up. So I'm just sitting there because I'm not a church person. And I see people fall out, and I'm saying, cool. Then I feel this burning urge to get up. First of all, I look like I need healing.
right,
I'm sitting there with a neck brace on. So I
right.
end up, I got myself up. Nobody there knew me, so I wasn't really embarrassed. And he began, matter of fact, he didn't pray for me. There was a lady who prayed for me. Strangely enough, the lady who prayed for me had a physical, her body had, I don't know if she had multiple sclerosis
Oh,
or
wow.
some spina bifida or something. So I didn't even keep my attention on that, but she prayed for me. And when she prayed for me, I felt this, she didn't even touch me. This felt this light, and it was a gentle force. But it wasn't like, it was like, you ever blown on a feather, like, and you see how it just moved. And that was like what happened is, but she didn't blow on me, and I felt myself go back, and I do remember hitting the floor, but it was softened because they had catchers, what they call them.
Yeah.
And I laid there on the floor, probably for about 5 minutes. I knew I was laying on the floor, and I felt this like heat in my neck area. So ultimately, the preacher came over to me, and he said to them ushers to help him up. And so as I got up, he says, "Did something happen to you?" Then I said, "Yeah." And then he says, "Well, can I take the neck brace off?" And so he took it off, and he told me to do some things, and did it, and I didn't have no pain, and it was done. Now this is the real issue of the story. So about a week later, the attorney came to the base to see me to sign some more documents, and I didn't have on a neck brace. He said,
Right.
"Wait a minute." He said, "You're supposed to have on a neck brace." And I said, "What happened?" He said, "Let me tell you this. You can hold on to whatever happened to you, or you can put that neck brace back on, or you can sign the papers, and whatever they offer you right now, if you have some residual in the future, this is it." So I ended up getting $10,000 out the deal, but at the same time, I signed off as, if anything, if it worsens, I signed it off on it because I wasn't feeling anything.
Right.
And so over the years, there's been times when I felt a little quirk in my neck, and I was saying to my first mind was saying, my memory was saying, you remember what that guy told you? Then I would just pull that thought down.
Yeah.
I would say things like, "I'm fearfully and wonderfully made," or I would just shift my focus to someone else. So that's just, I have an example of raising people from the dead.
Wow.
You want to hear that one?
Yeah, yeah. Let's hear
You
that.
want to hear that one?
Yes.
So I was married to, my wife was my co-pastor. So she was preaching this Sunday. I remember she was preaching, and Tony was a little more fiery than me. She's more of a preacher type, and she could sing and she could do all the things that I couldn't do. Would be in trouble if I could sing and preach and teach. Boy, it would be too bad. But she was preaching, and I'm sitting on the front row watching her, and I see her facial expression, and then she I looked back and I saw the man on the fourth row to my right had keeled over. Now this man was a fireman, and for sake of respect of who he was, I'm not going to say his name. He keeled over, but the church was full, probably about 150, 200 people in the church. He keels over, and then you hear, no, he wasn't a fireman. The man behind him was a fireman. There was a fireman sitting behind him. There was a nurse sitting 2 rows
Oh,
over.
wow.
He keeled over. His wife screams out, "Oh my God, Johnny's dead!" And then she says, "His mama died in church." Now all this happened in a nanosecond, and
Yeah.
then Tony looks at me and gives me the mic. I was like, "Why you give me the mic? You." But I take the mic. I begin to command the scenario. Just keep everything calm. I said, "You all need to be in prayer right now." And I began to speak life over him, and he began to come back. Now, the paramedic had verified that he didn't have a pulse, that he was dead.
Wow.
So I began to pray over him. He came back to consciousness, as far as I was concerned, back to life. And they moved him out of the sanctuary, and I continued to minister to the people in the moment. He will go to the hospital, and they verified that something had happened to him. And so you would think something like that would make that church just blow up, because next week everybody will know this man has brought somebody back. Now, but then the people begin to doubt. Oh, he won, but the wife verified. This is the same way his mother died, in the church. So that was a portal even for him. That may have been a fear thing even that he
Yes.
brought on his.
Yes.
And so that whole
Because
thing.
how
So
would that have been top of her mind? You know what I mean?
top of her mind, first thing she said,
That's something they
right,
carried with
right.
them.
And so sometimes when you have, so I have tons of experiences, but people will find a way to minimize. People
Yeah.
will find a way to, maybe it wasn't like the young brother that was shot in the head. And I go to the emergency room with Tony, and we pray for him. And to this day, this guy is walking around the community.
Wow.
Right, right. He was shot in the head. He was a teenager. And now he's about 38, and I still see him walking down the street. But he don't
Wow.
really know who I am, because I think he got caught up on some meds or something. And so he's been under the influence of substance.
Mm.
But I saw the power, and I have continued to see the power of God.
Wow. That's incredible.
That,
And
right.
it is, I mean, again, like we see in life, those
Mhm.
things that we come preloaded with some things, right? And so
Mhm.
like to me, you're a rock star. So like now you're like,
Mhm.
wow, because I
Right.
come preloaded with that. But when someone is just so full of doubt already, they find these ways to explain away. And I love, what I
Right.
heard one minister say, it's almost like, well, if you hate rich people, don't worry about it. You'll never be one. You know, and if
This is true.
and if you
This is
continue
true.
to be cynical, you will continue to be cynical. Like you will find things that will make you more cynical. So
Right.
but that is awesome. And see, those types of truths are things that we really learn the foundation of in the things that you now teach and you now study.
Right.
And so
Right.
I have really felt you have described yourself as a bridge. As you began to take Christianity in a more expanded way, there were people that you were learning from that said, "Why don't you just leave that Bible stuff alone, man? Like seriously, that stuff is whatever to them. It's outdated. It's whatever." But you said you see yourself as a bridge, and I want to hear about that. But I just want to say,
Okay.
like,
Okay.
for me, I feel that way. God told me as I was studying, because you go through this cognitive dissonance, maybe is what it is. And so it was like a frightening thing. Like these things I've had
Right.
just as true and sure experiences as you are. And now I'm learning other true and sure. And I'm like, like what the heck? And God said, no, you need both. For what I'm calling you to do, you need both. And I didn't really understand the call, but that it was reassuring to me. And so how was that for you? Like you said, you
Yeah.
even had some pulls and people telling you, man, leave that. Why are you hanging on to the
It was
Bible at all?
it was a really okay. First of all, I had respect for. So in 1987, I completed my master's degree in counseling psychology, and then I began to practice. Had a private practice, and I was seeing a lot of my clients who were coming were Christians, but they were talking to me about things that was not consistent with what they would talk to their pastors about. They would say they don't believe this, and And then I began to look a little deeper and study Black psychology. And Black psychology, the word psychology means suku. Okay, so whereas for the
Psychology
rest of
means what? I'm sorry.
the word psychology, it comes from the Kemetic word suku,
Okay.
which is the soul. And so what happened was I began to understand that even in psychology, we call ourselves studying the mind, but all we're really studying is the brain. All
Mm,
we're really studying is behavior. You're not studying, you're not a spiritual scientist in psychology. Unless you are pulling in the soul work, you're not doing what we would the commissions or the ancient Egyptians would call psych. What they didn't call it, it was all their spiritual practice. So as I begin to study, I begin to have cognitive dissonance. That is, what I was reading, the truth that I was coming into reality to, was bouncing up against what was true to me. Notice I said the truth and what is true. What is true is what we believe. And what we believe is based on our perception or based on what has been handed down to us. And it was a struggle against the two. And so as a pastor, I had to be responsible. I had this body of individuals who was following me. And so I didn't want to share everything that I was being made privy to without testing it out, because it says, woe to the pastors that scatter the sheep. That was the scripture. So I had to live in two worlds at the same time. And I wasn't being hypocritical. I was being mindful and respectful of the system that people was drawn to. When they came to the church, they came to me teaching a particular thing. I was at the same time inside of my own personal transformation. And we always have to be mindful of that. Where you at on your transformation may not be where those who are around you are at. You always have to be respectful to where people are. Just like most people don't realize, you and I have some very differing views on things, but I have a high regard for who you are as a person and the integrity that you operate in. And I try to be present to that and support it, and even have had conversations with you that shared that there was a difference in belief. But because our differences were acknowledged and we respect one another, it didn't affect our relationship.
right.
And so I learned those things by pastoring a group of people that I had to be responsible to. So so then I had some out of body situations. I went to Africa, went through a rites of passage, and I began to read all these books. And every book that I read, like Dr. Dr. Van Sertima, Dr. Ben Yakiman, Dr. Henrik Clark, all of these writers who came in through the 70s that was doing writing about Egypt, about Kemetic thought, expanded belief systems. I actually met these people.
Mm,
I mean, I actually got to sit at their feet, got to talk to them, got to touch them. Many of them have transitioned on, which I find weird, but I didn't know the magnitude of who these people were. These were
wow.
the scholars who have been to Egypt, who have been inside of the pyramids and all of those things, and had written books, and I wasn't aware of all that. And so I
Wow.
say that to say it came a point where I realized with my real eyes, not these two eyes, I realized that God was fulfilling the request I made.
Mm,
If he is real,
yeah.
show me in my lifetime.
Wow.
So mind you, before that point, I had been involved with a what we call a word church. A word church is like, for those who know, like Kenneth Copeland, Kenneth Hagin, Fred Price, Jerry Savelle,
Mhm.
um, Bill Winston's, Marilyn Hickey's. So those, and so the unique thing about those kind of churches are they were teaching churches, not
Right.
preaching churches.
Right.
I don't care for preaching. I don't, when I'm coming to church, I want to hear content. Now, I do have a favorite preacher who can teach and preach, and that's Noel Jones. He's a
Mm,
wordsmith. He's intelligent. So I like that. So I say all of that to say this. So I begin to study the Greek and the Hebrew. No, I'm not a Greek scholar. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but I know what aids, what books I need to have at my disposal when I'm reading the Bible, so I will bounce words off. So then one day I asked myself, was God a Hebrew or was God a Greek? And if God is neither Greek or Hebrew, why do we limit the expression of God by that validation? So I began to do my own research about the history of the church, the history of Catholicism. First, I started with the history of Protestant church. The Protestant church comes out of the Catholic church. The Catholic church had a strong influence out of the Kemetic spiritual system, which inside of the Kemetic spiritual system, Judaism was born. Moses is the father of that whole thing. And so as I began to study that, I began to put pieces together. Now, that caused me great consternation because I'm knowing all this stuff, but I can't tell nobody, or at least I can't tell the church folk. And then it came a point where I just got sick and tired of it. And in 2006, a lot of things transpired with the ministry. A lot of the things transpired. So I ultimately like closed the ministry down, and I went into silence. And it was a time to retool. So actually, from like 2010 to 2020, I was in silence, even though I was still having ministry at the hotels and doing things, but I wasn't really promoting it. Only people that were showing up was those who would hear my voice and was drawn to me. Then I went from there to doing virtual ministry. Even before pandemic hit, 2007, I was doing teleministry.
Yeah.
And then I started paying for WebEx, which I was paying like $180 something a month because it was a new platform.
Right.
Now I pay only $99 a month. Now you can even get Zoom without paying anything.
Yeah.
But you get what you pay for. So the question was, so I got into this conversation, and then I started move from the non-denominational church, and I began to get involved with New Thought because it was more expanded. It wasn't as rigid. But even while I was doing all that, I was like, no, where's this stuff all steep? Where did it all come from? So I've done enough study to know that all of the five, Judaism, Catholicism, what's the major religions? Judaism, Catholicism, Islam. That's top three. Is two more. Well, all of the major religious systems are steeped inside of the Kemetic spiritual system. That's foundational. So I'm now have been tasked with going a little deeper. So I'm not doing this because I've had a negative experience with Europeans. My life has been great. I've had a share of incidents with Europeans, but not to the point where I'm doing this because I don't like white people or I don't like Westerners. No, what I don't like is Western worldview has been superimposed on us, particularly on our religious system. So, example, I have a webinar coming up in the month of February. I'm gonna do a teaching that beyond Jesus being black. So a lot of people talk about the blackness of Jesus, and they use the scripture about his hair is wool on, and I'm like, so what? Because there's more to that. There's more behind that story than the color. It has nothing to do with color, but it has everything to do with the system. It has to do with the teachings. And why do I say that, for Minister Felicity? Because I believe that if we say prayer changes things, then why aren't things being changed?
Yeah.
And I believe it's because it's too adulterated.
Yeah.
We don't know how to pray. We're praying the wrong way. We're praying against what may be God's will. And so I'm looking at everything that I was given. I'm looking at my belief system and saying, can it stand the scrutiny of light? Or do I hold on to what I believe because the masses believe that? But I have the audacity. And that's why I have the apostolic call. I know you hear people talk about the apostle. The one thing about saying, okay, you got the fivefold ministry that spoke about, I believe in the Hebrews 4 and 11, like Ephesians 4 and 11.
Yeah.
He gave some apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers for the perfecting of the saints. The apostle is the one finger that holds it all together. The prophet is the one that can point out, has the mouth of God. The word says God does nothing in the earth except he first revealed it to his prophets. The evangelist is the one who the longest reaching finger on your hand, that is the expansion. So all of us has an evangelical role inside of expanding what we believe. The pastor is the ring finger. That's the covenant. That's the person inside that is compassionate, keeping it all together. Then you have the teacher. The teacher is the one that gets into the crevices of the word. Like when your ear itch, you can start out with a pointer, but when you use it, you get all the way down it. So that's the fivefold ministry. So I started out as a teacher. Mm-hmm. Then I and this is not an evolution. It don't have to happen this way, but this is how I evolved. A teacher, I became a pastor. I've always had an evangelistic appeal to people. I don't operate in the prophetic, but I'm influenced by the prophetic. But in 2000, that's when I got my call as an apostle. Mm. And I didn't make a big deal out of it because I don't want the scrutiny of people talking. But here's what the apostle is. The apostle always, when you look at the apostles, they were ushering a new system.
Yeah.
So they bring in something different than what has been. So I'm not an apostle as much as I am an apostolic voice for the body of Christ.
Yeah.
As we shift from the age of Pisces,
right,
to the age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
Somebody bridges the two and actually can help you look at the age of Aquarius, back it from into the age of Pisces, back it into the age of Aries, back it into the age of Taurus, back it into the very beginning in the age of Gemini. That's what we pick up in the book of Genesis. So it took in all these years, 30 years of additional study to get to this point where now it all makes sense. Mm-hmm. And now people are ready to hear what they weren't ready to hear 30 years ago.
It's amazing.
That's your question. I took you on a long journey there, but I hope I answered your question.
You absolutely answered my question. And I mean, it's just, it's foundational to me. When I learned about the age of Aquarius is when I felt my call. I said, that's what I feel called to do, is help the church into the age of Aquarius. And today I heard a fantastic teaching, which included the study of revivals. And this guy was saying, people keep praying for revival. Have you studied revival to know when you're in one, so when you can stop praying? And he was suggesting that out of evidence-based, it's a fantastic teaching. We are in revival right now because of the changes, the upheaval, and really the Great Awakening 2, various revivals were all named after they happened. About 30 years after, people would look back and say, that was a revival. Look at the change that happened, then. And so, but if we study our history, we can even identify when it's happening now. And he was explaining, one of the things that is a hallmark of revival is persecution of the church.
Mm-hmm. Now that's good. Yeah, give you an example. But we have to be careful with revival. Means this: to bring something back to life that was dead.
Yeah, right.
Give you a good example. When Moses went up on the mount, on the top of the mountain to get the 10 commandments, he was up there so long that the people wanted to go back to something else.
Yes.
So when he came down off the mountain, a revival had broke out. How do I know it was a revival? Because what did they do? They had revived the golden calf. So the bull, the Taurus. Moses was bringing the people out of the time of Taurus, the age of Taurus. He was ushering them into the age of Aries, and he was upset with them because they had revived something that should be dead. Now, here's what I'm cautioning the body of Christ for. We have to be careful that we don't revive our old time religion.
Oh my
goodness.
We don't
revive, right.
For some people, that is what revival means, and that's why they will continue to pray as an actual revival is happening, because they don't know what to look for. They miss it because my definition is that the church has been dead. And so God is reviving and bringing back to life, whereas things that people taught me to fear. Now, it wasn't like I was going to look into things and people said don't do that. It's just when any of these topics would come up, people would say, don't look into horoscopes, don't look into meditation, don't look into this. Not because I was looking, I'm just saying that was the culture of an understanding of fear of these other types of quote, and I always put it in quotes, new age things, because I just think it's we don't understand the terms that we're using. But 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 what my submission has been and what people have been listening to me and understanding is that these are things that the church gave up. Christianity is an Eastern religion, and we have left our Eastern.
What's wrong with Killer? What's wrong with Killer? What's wrong with Killer? You better check. Killer may try to point at you or something.
Roscoe and Donnie are completely co-signing everything I'm saying. They're getting excited now. See, it's really exciting out there right now. I think Johnny actually got here. But yeah, so that
you mentioned, right? You mentioned a couple things. That how the church being really has its birth in the Eastern, as an Eastern spiritual system, not a Western spiritual system.
Right. I mean, because it's Hebrew is East,
right.
Israel is East.
All of that. And so when we talk about like there was a period in my life in the 80s where I was aware of the New Age and I was against it. Do you ever used to watch John Ankerberg? I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he used to have all these guests that will come on that would refute the witchcraft.
Oh, wow.
Now that's interesting. So the word witchcraft, we spell it this way. So when you hear the word witchcraft, you spell it THCRAFT, witchcraft. But the reality is the original use of that term was witch, like WHICH. Yeah. Which craft are you operating in? So there are some people who can do palmistry, some people who can do tarot cards. There are some people who can do the runes. Now you may say, what is the runes? Like, when who was that he killed himself, jumped over the bridge, Judas. Oh. When Judas killed himself, how did they replace him? They drew straws.
Right.
That is a African way of making a decision in certain African spiritual systems. But because of the way the Bible has been positioned from a Western worldview, anything that does not fall inside of the construct of a Western or Europeanized worldview is seen as negative. So we have to be very careful, because now there's a resurgence, and guess what? More people are doing tarot cards, understanding astrology, astrotheology, numerology. We've always been playing with your birth sign. Every Christian if you ask them what sign it is, they can tell you what sign they are. Except don't ask them on Sunday, because they'll tell you I'm a stop sign. Stop asking me those kind of questions. But if you have an intimate conversation, just a general conversation with them, every Christian I know what sign they is, and they are, and they can tell you a little bit about that sign. That's cognitive dissonance. That is, I believe this is true because I know it to be true because I am like that, but I'm not going to say that at church or anywhere around any of my Christian friends, because that's off limits. That's the devil stuff.
What I want to share with you all, because there are people that come from New Age and what they would consider New Age, and they have transitioned into Christianity and they had a bad experience there. And so what I want to what I really feel has been revealed to me, and that I have actually seen, there is a huge difference when you are practicing something because you were offended with the last thing, as opposed to approaching something in purity. with just questions, you know what I mean, and doing research. So what you saw might be what you thought you saw, or what actually happened because someone was coming from a place of offense. But when someone is practicing in a place of purity and love, it's totally different. Man looks at what? Outward appearance.
No.
God looks at the heart. And it is a very different experience. So I like
You,
to share things with people that help them to make these transitions. And you just explained why I am not experiencing yet as much pushback as I expected. Um, Definitely, you know, the more we get into this age of Aquarius, the more the door has opened. God is, you could say, giving the grace to people to be able to understand. But something practical you just said is that people have been experiencing cognitive dissonance anyway. So now what I'm saying is, and honestly, it when you get out of the cognitive dissonance, once that gets resolved for you, you have had no greater weight lifted off of you than that. You know what I
come,
mean?
it's like
So
calling Lazarus from the dead. Take
yes,
those grave clothes off. Right, right, right.
yes. So they're like grateful. And it's interesting. It's kind of like you know, when my pastor, when I first started going to his church, a lot of the things he was preaching were new, you know, and it would be so quiet. It would be so quiet in our church because we were learning, you know,
Right.
and more hoopy hollery ministers, because he had a lot of good relationships. So we'd get all kinds of big ministers to come, and they'd be like, God, it's quiet here. It's because we're learning. Like we have
Right.
notes out, you know. So when I even do my lives or when I speak and stuff, there's not a lot of comments because but God was showing me they're learning. You know, they're
Right.
receiving. There's not
Present.
a lot of, yeah, that's right,
Right.
amen. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Right.
you know what I
They're
mean?
processing, they're processing what you are sharing with them. You said something that I really want to circle back to. Okay, so perception. If you example, so if you perceive, let's say, if you perceive astrology as bad and is of the devil, then you're going to have experiences that will fall in line with that. Perception, belief, and perception are the two lenses that impact the experience. So if all your life you were told you may be an individual who have the gift to read, let's say to read people, but you've been told that's the work of the devil, and so you never really do that, but you never get to really express yourself as God fully would have you to be. So that's the cognitive dissonance, and people need a bridge, or they need people like you and I to meet people where they are. And if people want to stay where they are, I let them stay there.
Absolutely.
Like the person asked me, if you ask me a question, I will usually ask you, like in an intimate conversation, if somebody asks me about something I do, I will ask them this: what difference will it make when I tell you the story? If it's not going to, if you're not going to seriously consider changing, if it's truth, then why should I share it with you? Because I'm not here to get in an argument with you. I'm not here to cause any more dissonance in your life. So when people come in relationship with me, that tells me that it's time for them to move to the next level. And so
Absolutely.
I have to find out, are they ready for that?
I believe that we could talk a lot longer. And I want to respect, you know, your time as well as the time I set for the show. But I want to ask that you'll come back this year, because
That
there's a lot more to unpack. And I believe that as we get further along, even in the year, we're going to be ready for more and more information. And what I, you know, just like to share with people is this is happening, right? Like, you know, I have experienced a little pushback, you know, not much, not bad. But there are people that respect me anyway. And so already, and so they're a little shocked when I say certain things. And so I've been able to kind of slide in there to just let them know this is happening. This is not something that I am making happen, and it's going to happen if I don't say another word. I'm trying to help you see that this is a transition that is happening. There are things that you were told that is not accurate. It's not
Yes.
accurate. And we should, God is into maturity. He's totally into maturity. So there's things you can't handle when you're 3, as when you're 33. And there should be some things that the people of God can handle now that maybe we weren't able to handle at a certain time. This is happening. This is what's going down, and it's an absolutely beautiful thing. And as always, what's wonderful is that if you have a real relationship with God, you can always talk to God about it. And he's so awesome the way, because he explains things to you the way you need to hear it, not the way somebody else
Yes.
needs to hear. He'll make it make sense to you. And that's what's so awesome and takes off a lot of pressure, because if you don't understand me or anything like that, like, he comes in and can clean it up. But you have to go to him, because you have 2 options. You can throw stones at Greg and I, and it's not going to make a bit of difference to us at all. You know what I mean? Or you can go to God and ask a question, and I believe that you won't end up throwing those stones, right? Because that's what even happened with Jesus and the woman that was accused. He said, now, which of you actually, that's what God's going to say to you, which of you actually can throw stones at them, right? But he'll explain it to you, might be writing it in the sand, and no one else gets to know what he said, but you'll understand what he means, and he'll help you get to that next level. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work you do in my life. Thank you for ordaining me and receiving me. It's been a blessed journey over these last 6 years, I believe it is. So looking forward to having you back.
Good. I would love to, as a bonus, drop in this link, a link into this feed regarding to Age of Aquarius, the training I did. I have a YouTube. I'll
Oh,
drop it.
wonderful. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, and so it's our teaching on the Age of Aquarius. Actually understanding all of the biblical ages from Genesis with the twins all the way to now.
Oh my gosh, this is a bonus. This is like a bonus for me too. I had no idea. So
Great.
thank you. We got a treat
Yeah.
tonight, guys. Not a never before seen video, a never before seen by me video. I didn't even
But
know.
it's been seen by very few people. Yeah.
How long ago did you do it?
Um, Probably 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
2 weeks ago. When we moved into the Aquarian constellation,
Yeah.
because we are not in the age of Aquarius. We're on the backside of the age of Pisces. We're on the front side. We're in the energy of both. That's why
Okay.
you're having such a contrast
I see.
of the church age and the spirit age.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I'm like so excited. And I also have to say I'm very excited to hear that it all started with the age of Gemini, which is mine.
That's right. The Bible starts in the age of Gemini.
I did
The
not know.
Bible history starts in Gemini.
Yeah. That's so exciting. Well, wow, lots of treasures, lots of treats
Yeah.
tonight. Look out for that YouTube link. We will put it out there for you all. And also, I want to let you all know about a very life-changing class that is coming up tomorrow with Gregory Stanton. It is called the Envision course, and it was
I'll
absolutely,
drop that link too.
yeah, absolutely. It
I'll
was
put the link there.
life changing for me. You all know I have a Vision University. We call it Virtual Vision U. It has shaped that work in a great way. And I'm able to really lead people in envisioning their lives and, vision boards, all that kind of stuff. When you add this element, you won't be, building your ladder of success on the wrong wall. It's fantastic. So cannot recommend that more highly. Starts tomorrow night. So check back here, look for that link. And again, Apostle Greg Stanton, what a pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I will chat with you and look for the links in about 5 minutes in this feed line.
Fantastic. All right,
Okay.
then. We'll see you
Thank
there.
you.
Bye-bye.